Please join me in Gasho as I read a passage from the Tanisho. Although I say the Nembutsuge, I rarely experience joyful happiness, nor do I have the desire to immediately go to the Pure Land. What should be done about that? I, Shinran, have been having the same question also, and now you, Yuienbo, have the same thought. Namamidas. This passage is from chapter 9 in the Tanisho, and it's part of an exchange between Shinran and his student Yuienbo, and it's about doubt. Good morning, everybody. It's always kind of a two-edged sword to follow Jack, to have Jack do the kids' talk before me. I really appreciate their energy and the involvement of the kids. But the other edge makes me have to raise my game. So I hope I'm up for the task. Last summer, my daughter Mayu and I were headed somewhere in the car. We were driving along in silence, both of us in our own thoughts, when she says, "Papa, sometimes I think I'm a really bad Buddhist." This came out of the blue, and it took me a bit by surprise. Why do you say that? Because I don't actually believe it's real. Oh, what do you think is not real? Well, I guess it is mostly the stories. Dharma and the 48 vows, the Pure Land, all that mystical stuff. You know what? Me too, I confessed. And this is what I want to talk about today. Fact and truth. Or maybe I should say fact versus truth. At first blush, fact and truth sound like the same thing. In English, we often use them interchangeably, but they are not the same. And recognizing the difference between them goes to the heart of Mayu's and my conversation. So, what is a fact? A fact is something that actually exists or occurs. It is an actual event or situation. It is something that is or isn't. It either happened or it didn't. It is verifiable. It lives in the world of history and science and evidence. The world we can point to, measure, and confirm. That water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit and freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, or 100 degrees Celsius of 0 Celsius, are basic facts that we all learn in elementary school. Shakyamuni Buddha was born in Lumbini in what is now Nepal, sometime around the 5th century BCE. That is a fact, or at least historians work carefully to establish it as one. But then we come to the stories central to our Jodo Shinshu practice. Dharmakara, the Bodhisattva who would become Amida Buddha, surveying all the Buddha lands across countless worlds, making 48 vows of boundless compassion, practicing for eons, and finally fulfilling every one of those vows to create the Pure Land, Sukhavati, described in the sutras as the realm of light to the west, adorned with jeweled trees, lotus ponds, rivers of perfumed water where the Dharma itself flows like music through the air. Did the making and fulfilling of vows happen factually, literally, in the way that water boils and freezes? Does the Pure Land actually exist somewhere in the cosmos or in some alternative dimension in the way that Lumbini exists on the map? This is what I think Mayu was grappling with. There was a scholar of mythology named Joseph Campbell. You might be familiar with him. PBS produced and aired a 6-episode miniseries in 1988, The Power of Myth. which was based on interviews of him by Bill Moyers. He spent his life studying the sacred stories of cultures across the world, from ancient Greece to the Norse traditions, from Hindu epics to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Through his research, he found that human beings in every culture, in every era, tell the same kind of stories. Not the same facts. The characters, settings, cosmologies are all different. But the basic literary shapes are the same. The hero who descends into darkness and returns transformed. The God who sacrifices everything out of love. The realm beyond death where the soul finds rest. The vow that holds across all of time. Campbell's conclusions was somewhat revolutionary. He said that myths are not just primitive attempts to explain phenomena like lightning or earthquakes that we have long since outgrown. They are not failed science. Myths are something else entirely. They are the language the human soul uses to speak about things that ordinary language cannot express. Campbell argued that we have made a grave mistake in the modern world and in many religious traditions by reading mythic stories as if they were meant to be factual accounts, as if they are history. When we do that, we force ourselves into an impossible choice. Either defend the literal facts against all evidence, or throw the whole story away. Campbell called this the broken myth, a story that has lost its power because we are confused about the purpose of the story. But there is a third way. In Buddhism, there's always a third way, a middle way, if you will. We can ask what the story is actually doing. What does it open in us? What does it heal? What does it show us about the nature of reality that we couldn't see before? And when we ask these questions, the stories come alive. Not in spite of our intelligence, but because of it. This past January, one of our Sangha members, Yuki, led a fascinating Dharma exchange. She talked about a trip she took recently, a pilgrimage to Buddhist sites in northern India. She told him an experience she had while on retreat at a monastery in Dharamsala. The story she shared stuck in my mind. The retreat included opportunities to audience with a monk from the monastery, a person who was a translator for the Dalai Lama. During the session, the monk asked her a seemingly simple question. Who are you? She answered with her name. The teacher nodded and asked again, who are you? She offered her age, where she was from, her role in life. The teacher listened quietly and asked again, who are you? Each time she answered the question with a fact, the teacher repeated, who are you? Not because the facts Yuki was giving were wrong, they were her facts after all, but because the teacher was pointing somewhere those facts could not reach. The teacher wasn't asking for a biography. The teacher was asking about the truth of her. The awareness that remains when you strip away the name, the age, the story. That which is sitting here right now, breathing, noticing, unable to be fully captured in any answer. The truth after you strip away all the facts. Facts about ourselves are real, but they are not the whole truth of who and what we are. The mythic stories of our tradition work the same way. They are not biographies of celestial beings. They are not travel guides to other dimensions. They are the deepest attempt to point at what we are in a language that goes beyond the thinking mind. Amita's vow to save all beings, even the most broken, even the most lost, even those who have given up on themselves. Is that a fact? Or is it a truth that hundreds of millions of people across more than 1,000 years have found working in their lives, giving solace and peace when nothing else could? I don't think that Shakyamuni Buddha, the seven patriarchs, Shinran Shonin, were building a system of factual claims to be believed. They were pointing toward an experience of being received completely and unconditionally by something larger than the self. Now, doubt is not a departure from the Buddhist path. Questioning is the Buddhist path. The Buddha's final words, as recorded in the Mahaparinibbana Sutra, were spoken to his attendant Ananda, who asked, "Who will be our teacher now?" Shakyamuni Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourself. Be a refuge unto yourself. Seek no external refuge. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp." This was his last teaching, his final gift to the Sangha. The teaching was not, "Believe what I have told you without question." It was not, "The one who doubts is lost." It was not, "Defend the stories against all criticism, or you are no longer one of us." Rather, he said, look within, investigate, be honest, hold what you find to be real in your own direct experience. Campbell pointed out that the great mystics and sages of every religion understood their stories symbolically, as fingers pointing to the moon, not as the moon itself. In contrast, it is often the institutions, the systems, the defenders of orthodoxy who harden the stories into literal facts that have to be believed and who reject those who do not. And in so doing, they lose, and I maintain they kill, the very thing the stories are trying to give. So, what do we do with the stories? Campbell suggested that instead of asking, did this happen? Is it a fact? We should ask, what is this story's truth? What does it open in me? What does it heal? What does it show me about reality that I can't see without it? When I hear that Amida Buddha practiced for kalpas upon kalpas, made vows of impossible compassion for all beings, past, present, and future, including me, especially me, and fulfilled every single one of them, something wakens inside. I feel less alone. I feel less condemned by my own failures and confusion. I feel less hopeless. I feel, in a word, embraced. Whether the Pure Land exists to the west of here, the way Portland exists to the north of Salem, that is a fact question. I can't answer that. To me, it seems pointless and helpless to pretend that it is a fact and that it's settled. But whether the truth the Pure Land points to of being received exactly as I am, without precondition, is real, well, that I can't accept. That I can let change the way I see and move through the world. The stories are not less than facts. In many ways, they are more. They reach into places that facts cannot go. They speak to the part of us that Yuki's teacher at the retreat was pointing toward when he kept asking, "But who are you really?" My daughter thought she was a bad Buddhist. I want to tell her, and I want to say to anyone here who has carried that same quiet worry, that this tradition we practice was built by doubters. Shinran himself was a man who had failed at conventional practice for 20 years, who could not achieve through his own effort and discipline what the path seemed to demand, who came to the teacher Honen broken and exhausted, and found not a demand to try harder, but the open hand of a compassion that required nothing of him except honesty. That is not the story of someone who had all the facts straight. That is the story of someone who found truth in the very place he had been most afraid to look. Campbell wrote that one of the functions of mythology is to validate and support the moral order of the society that holds it. But, he said, the deeper function, the one that matters most, is to carry the individual across the threshold into direct experience of the sacred. Not a belief about the sacred, an experience of it. The Nembutsuge, Namamyabutsu, is not a recitation of facts. It is not a declaration of doctrinal positions. It is the sound of the heart recognizing something it cannot fully explain and yet cannot deny. It is gratitude arising. It is the soul recognizing, I am unfailingly held, never to be abandoned. Even me, even here, even now, even as I am. Namo Dabbutsu, I take refuge in Amida Buddha. You do not have to have resolved every question and doubt to say those words. You do not have to have figured out the cosmology or settled the metaphysics. You do not have to believe the stories as fact. You only have to be willing to listen deeply, willing to be honest, willing to be held by something you cannot fully see, willing to be grateful. The lamp the Buddha asks us to carry is not certainty. It is sincerity. It is the willingness to keep looking, the willingness to keep questioning, the willingness to keep sitting with what is real, the willingness to see the truth. Mayu, struggling with her doubt, thinking she is a bad Buddhist, and wondering if it disqualifies her, is doing exactly what the Buddha taught. Thinking, questioning, refusing to pretend and just going along, being a lamp unto herself. And that is being a good Buddhist. Please join me in Dasho. Although I say to Nembutsu, I rarely experience joyful happiness, nor do I have the desire to immediately go to the Pure Land. What should be done about this? I, Shinran, have been having the same question also, and now you, Yuyembo, have the same thought. Namami Dabbutsu.